So there's a big misunderstanding about conditions like MECFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID that may be keeping people stuck. So fortunately, Dr. Gabor Maté, who's a very knowledgeable doctor, who has an understanding of the mind-body connection, has written a book called When the Body Says No. And it sheds light on the nature of this understanding. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what this misunderstanding is. Key ideas from his book, which help us understand why his perspective is important if you've got a health challenge like ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID related conditions. And I'm going to share strategies that he advocates to support your body's healing. So if you're watching live, do say hello. Thanks for joining me. If you're watching the replay, put hashtag replay. So very briefly, I want to introduce myself. My name's Simon Pimenta. I had MECFS fibromyalgia for 8-9 years. I could not walk for 1 minute at times. I was bedbound, but I got back to work, got back to life. And what helped me, having tried lots of things, was the kind of mind-body approaches that I'm going to be talking about in this video. So let's get into it. And as I do say hi, it's useful to check that the chat is working. So biological abnormalities are well documented with conditions like MECFS, long COVID, etc. These include immune system dysfunction, mitochondrial impairment, autonomic nervous system dysregulation, abnormal stress response and neuroinflammation. And these findings strongly suggest that there's a biological component to these conditions. Some people interpret that to say that MECFS and related conditions have a purely biological cause. That's misleading and it's oversimplified. There's no single confirmed biological cause. There's no single pathogen, gene, biological marker that has been universally identified as being the cause. Okay, the word cause implies there's a direct, universally agreed upon origin, and we don't have that. The ME Association in the UK states it's not clear what causes MECFS. If that's the case, then the above statement, MECFS has a biological cause, is questionable. Triggers vary. For some people it's infections, trauma, surgery, major stressors. This suggests a multifactorial and individualized origin, not one biological cause. A more accurate statement might be MECFS is associated with clear biological abnormalities, but the precise cause is still unknown and likely complex. Or there's increasing evidence that MECFS involves biological dysfunctions, although the exact cause has not been identified. Okay, so Diane says hi. Hi Diane, thanks for letting me know you're here and you can hear me. As I say, I see there's other people in the call. Do free to say hello and let me know what your thoughts are about this as we go. If you've got any comments, questions, pop them in the chat. So let's talk about Dr. Gabor Maté's perspective. He's written this book, When the Body Says No, which is well worth a read. But I want to share a brief summary of this groundbreaking book and some actionable takeaways. So he asks us to consider whether our chronic symptoms are your body's way of speaking the truth that your mind has been trained to silence. So someone who reviewed his book talked about the idea, if you've got a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail, i.e. that Gabor Maté's way of looking at things is the only way. I invite you to consider that it is a piece of the jigsaw and there may be other factors to consider. But it's important not to just ignore this piece of the jigsaw. So he explores the deep connection between stress, emotional expression, suppression, and physical illness. So repression is the subconscious pushing down of our emotions. We don't realize we're doing it. Suppression is the conscious decision not to act on our emotions. maybe out of fear of being judged by others, not wanting to upset people or make a fuss, and because we don't validate our emotions. Is that relevant to you? Do you do those things? I absolutely used to do those things. I've had to retrain myself to recognize that my emotions are valid. They're normally pretty accurate. My response, if someone says or does something, I think I'm a fairly good judge of whether someone is behaving fairly or unfairly. And so it's important to recognize that your body, your nervous system, is a very refined early warning system. It lets you know when something feels good, something doesn't feel good. How good do you think you are at listening to your nervous system? Let me know in the chat. So he argues that when we continually repress or suppress our emotions, suppress our needs, our boundaries, then the body will eventually say no for us through symptoms, through illness. So let's explore some key ideas from his book. And as we go, I'm interested to know which ones particularly resonate. So let me know. So the first one, emotional stress isn't just psychological, it's biological. Chronic stress, including psychological stress, I've talked about this before, but there are 4 types of stress: acute physical stress, chronic physical stress, acute psychological stress, and chronic psychological stress. Chronic stress impacts the immune system, the nervous system, and hormones. Over time, this can increase vulnerability to autoimmune conditions, chronic related conditions, cancer, and other serious illnesses. Natalie says hi. Nice to have you, Natalie, here. So biological dysfunction can be a result of emotional dysfunction. Second point, certain personality traits show up again and again in people with chronic illnesses, and these traits are often learned in childhood. These include compulsive caregiving, people-pleasing, repressed anger, ability to say no, perfectionism. These so-called bad traits, these aren't bad traits, and having them doesn't make us bad or a flawed person. But let me know, are there one or more things on that list that you recognize are relevant to you? I used to be a people pleaser. I definitely used to repress my anger. I wasn't very good at saying no. I didn't think I was a perfectionist, but then what I realized is when I made mistakes, I was hard on myself. That's a form of perfectionism. So having these traits, as I say, doesn't make us bad or flawed. It just makes us be a human being. You know, there are some people, I think not many, who are super cool, never get stressed, who are very balanced and grounded. But many of us have some of these traits that we learned and developed. So third point, emotional wounding plays a key role. Early emotional wounding, I should say. Children grow up in environments often where emotions are dismissed, punished, ignored. And so a child may learn to shut down their inner signals. If they have the experience of when they express their frustration, they're upset, they get told off. These are survival strategies that developed from a time when expressing needs didn't feel safe. However, these signals don't disappear. The body remembers and it speaks through symptoms. So what can we do? Well, Dr. Gabor Maté doesn't blame people for getting ill, but he does invite us to get curious. Consider that your body will vote with its feet if you disregard it. It isn't broken beyond repair. Excuse me. It is trying to protect you. It isn't betraying you. It is dysregulated. Consider, do you think that way about your body when it's not working? There was a time when certainly I wasn't thinking in that way. Okay? But what your body needs is safety. It needs honesty. It needs patience. It needs acceptance. It needs authenticity. There's something very potent about being authentic. I'm sure you've had the experience either being authentic yourself or being around people who just operate in a very authentic way. And that kind of turns heads. We need to be compassionate towards ourselves. We need to give ourselves space to heal. So many people I work with are putting pressure on themselves. Sometimes they don't even realize that they're putting pressure on themselves. And your body needs to be listened to, especially by one person in particular. Helen says hello. Hi, Helen. So who is that person, do you think? Any guesses? Who is the person that especially needs to be listened to? Of course, it's yourself. So Dr. Gabor Maté outlines the 7 A's of healing in his book, When the Body Says No, as being key principles recovering from chronic stress, emotional repression, and illness. These are not a step-by-step method, but just essential elements that support healing, wholeness, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So here are the 7 A's of healing. The first one is acceptance. So this is about fully acknowledging and accepting the reality of your thoughts, your emotions, past experiences, without denial and repression. And sometimes this shows up, he tells stories of people saying, oh yeah, my childhood was fine. But when they talk further, it becomes very clear that their childhood was anything but fine. Why does it matter? Well, healing begins when we stop fighting or avoiding our inner reality and begin to face it with honesty. The second one is awareness. So this is about becoming aware of your internal emotional landscape, stress responses, behaviours, and their impact on your body. I realised when I had MECFS that at one point I had an interaction with someone where they weren't behaving in a respectful way. And I just repressed my feelings. All I noticed was tension in my body and discomfort, but I wasn't really consciously aware of what it was I was doing to create all this tension in my body. What I was doing was, number one, invalidating my emotions. Number two, I was carrying the belief that it wasn't okay to be emotional, to have a reaction, okay? And it wasn't okay to make a fuss, all right? So become aware of your internal emotional landscape, stress responses, behaviors, and their impact on your body. Why this matters, you can't change what you're unaware of. Awareness brings insight, clarity, and it opens the door to conscious change. I'm just going to look at the comments. Dan says, I read the book a few years ago and it makes so much sense. And it made so much sense. I started seeing the patterns, personality traits, and life events that definitely could have contributed to me getting ME. More importantly, this awareness is helping me deal with ME and now cancer. Sorry to hear that, Diane. But I'm glad that it's helping you. Okay? So number 3, anger. Healthy expression of. We can suppress our anger. We can express it in ways that are not healthy. But it's important to recognize and express anger in healthy, constructive ways rather than suppressing it, repressing it. Why this matters? Why this matters is that pushing down our anger can fuel chronic stress and illness. Healthy anger helps us protect our boundaries and honour our needs. And it gives a clear signal to other people about what we're willing to tolerate and not tolerate. So number 4 is autonomy. This is about reclaiming your sense of self, separate from other people's expectations or demands. and asserting your right to make choices. You've probably heard this expression before, that no is a full sentence, doesn't need explanation, doesn't need apology. Why it matters. Many people with chronic illnesses overextend themselves to please others. Autonomy supports inner peace and reduces toxic stress. Helene says, have started doing it last year, but it takes time shifting my inner voice. Well done. It does take work, and it's important we're compassionate towards ourselves. Okay? Personal growth is a lifelong task. Number 5, attachment. This is about cultivating healthy relationships where you feel seen, safe, and supported. Why this matters: human connection is essential to emotional and physical health. Secure attachment can help heal past wounds. Okay? Number 6, assertion. This is about the ability to communicate our needs, desires, and boundaries clearly and respectfully. I have this acronym HRT. Communication for me needs to be honest, respectful, and transparent. And that's from others. That's my goal. I would like that. And I want to give that as well. Okay? So why it matters: learning to say no when needed is key to reducing chronic stress and protecting your well-being. And number 7 is affirmation. This is about valuing and affirming your true self, your emotions, your needs, and your worth. Why this matters is self-affirmation rebuilds inner trust and counters internalized shame or self-neglect, which is often linked to illness. Okay, so together these 7 A's, let me just read them out again. Acceptance, awareness, anger, autonomy, attachment, assertion, affirmation. Invite a return to authenticity, emotional honesty, self-compassion. Key ingredients in both psychological and physical health. Natalie says, I'm just reading Mind Your Body. Nicole Sachs talks about repressed emotions. I've heard many people recommend that book, so it is on my list. It sounds like a great book. So healing begins with awareness. So a few things you could practice is reconnecting to your body, noticing when you feel sensations in your body. Note, I use the word sensations rather than symptoms, because I think the word sensations is less emotive. And we can experience nice sensations as well as ones that are more unpleasant. Okay? So noticing when you feel tense in your body. Noticing your emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, resentment. Noticing when you feel fatigue in your body. Okay? Recognizing where you override your needs. I was at a family gathering yesterday, and I realise I've still got this pattern where I don't really think about, okay, when's enough? I was the last, me and one of my cousins were the last people to leave. And I think that's because I just sometimes get a bit carried away. Enjoyed being with people, but a lot of people, well, everyone left before us, okay? So that's a little something I'm clocking. Okay, I've got to be more, intentional about when I go, rather than just going with the flow all the time. Sometimes that's great, but sometimes I need to steer my ship, if you like. So recognizing when you override your needs. Setting boundaries with kindness. This includes setting boundaries with others and yourself. And being honest with your feelings. For example, learning to say no without apology, without explanation. Let's find out. How good are you, do you think, at saying no? Let me know in the chat. Good, average, rubbish, or not so good at it. Let me know. I used to be absolutely really bad at saying no because I didn't want to upset people. And now I'm much better at it. Someone asked me I remember a while back, oh, can you give me a lift to such and such place? It was completely out of my way. And I just said no. And they were a bit taken aback. But I was completely okay with it. So I'd love to know what your takeaways are. What's one action you could take from those things I've just shared? Diane says, practicing John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction meditation is helping me become self-aware and relaxed. Awesome. And here's the thing, whatever we practice, we get good at. So if we practice being a doormat, letting people walk all over us, we get better at that. And they come to expect that. Okay? Whatever we practice, we get good at. So yeah, what are your actions? What is a takeaway? What is one action you could take? Okay, so let me know in the chat. If you found this useful, do give me a thumbs up. It helps other people find the video. And if you can share the video with anyone who might find it useful, that would be great. If you'd like more tips, do join my Facebook group. I'll put the link below this video. You're very welcome to attend the resilience group coaching. That normally happens fortnightly, but we just did one today. I'm going to be doing one next week and the week after because I had a little break. So if you'd like information about that, comment group below. There's no charge. You are welcome to make a donation, but no obligation. And it's a chance to kind of connect with others, get some coaching, have a laugh. People say they kind of like the fact that they realize that there are other people dealing with similar challenges. People find that if I'm coaching one person, someone else finds that that's useful for them. So thumbs up from Natalie. Thanks very much. So you're welcome to attend the Resilience Group coaching. If you want to know more about the MindBody Reconnect, which applies a lot of the wisdom that Dr. Gabor Maté shares, because Claire Caldwell, who created the MindBody Reconnect, has trained with Dr. Gabor Maté, then put the words, let's put mind in the chat, and I'll send you a link to a short video and a PDF that explains that approach. And people have said just watching that video has been super helpful, and it's helped them have a better understanding of what this mind-body connection is all about. So if you'd like to watch that video, access the PDF, comment mind below. So Helen asks, how does one balance tackling the suppressed stuff without going too deep into the trauma? So that's a really great question. Oops, hang on. Sorry, I accidentally hit the wrong button there. The short answer to that is gently. So if we go back to those tips I just shared, practicing just connecting to the body, starting to tune in. What's going on in my body? What sensations am I noticing? What emotion might be behind that? So we don't need to dive deeply into the pool of emotion. We can dip our toe in, okay? And those strategies I've shared are just a way of accessing that in a gentle way. So I hope that gives you food for thought. Definitely go gently, okay? We don't have to force things. We don't have to go looking too hard for emotions. We can just pause. In fact, let's just do this right now. I invite you to close your eyes. Obviously, only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. And this is one of the things we start every resilience group coaching session with. Okay? So I invite you to close your eyes only if it's safe to do so. I invite you to take a breath in through your nose, into your belly, and out of your nose, as long as that's comfortable. And as you breathe in and out, I invite you just to allow the out breath to be a little longer than the in breath. When you do that, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, healing state. And we're going to do this exercise in a very particular way. I'm inviting you just to observe, to notice what you're experiencing without analysis, without interpretation, without catastrophizing. And what I invite you to do is just to tune into your body and notice the sensations in your body. What sensations do you notice in your body? Just bring your awareness to that sensation in your body, as long as that feels comfortable to do so. If it at all feels uncomfortable, you can just pause, go back to breathing. Or you can orient, you can just look around the room at objects. So that's the first step, is just to tune in to your body, noticing the sensations in your body. And that's a really, really simple practice that I encourage you to cultivate. Maybe you could do it after every meal, or when you put the kettle on. The next step is just to tune in what emotions are around right now. Again, we're doing this without judgment, analysis, interpretation. Just noticing. Again, if it's uncomfortable to be with the emotions, you can just stop that and go back to focusing on your breath, or just opening your eyes and orienting, looking around the room at objects. Just being aware of sounds that you can hear. Being aware of the physical body and the connection with the body. And this is a really simple practice, okay? First of all, just connect to your breath. Number 2, connect to your body. Notice the sensations. Number 3, connect to the emotions. Notice the emotions. And by doing that, we're rewiring the brain to help us connect back to the body, because many people I chat to are very good at disconnecting from their body and getting in their head. And signs that we're in our head is when we're overanalyzing, worrying, catastrophizing, chastising ourselves. When we're people-pleasing, when we're being perfectionists. These are behaviors that have come as a result of disconnecting from those emotions. So Diane says, I worked with a psychologist for a few years to expose suppressed stuff, but eventually decided to put it behind me and learn to stay present in my life today through simple meditation. And you raise an important point, because when I work with people, teaching them the MindBody Reconnect, we're not focusing on delving into the past in any great depth. What we're focusing on is the here and now. What is it I can do now to meet my needs? So that's an important point you've raised. So thank you for sharing that, Diane. So let me know how you found doing that simple check-in. And as I say, I invite you to do that a few times a day, to just practice connecting to our body. Back to what I said earlier, whatever we practice, we get good at. If I practice disconnecting, I get good at that. If I practice connecting to my body, I get good at that. I was sharing with someone today, I remember a time when I was a child that I experienced, it felt like I was totally connected and aware of every part of my body. And it felt really strange. It felt very uncomfortable. And I think it was uncomfortable because I wasn't used to being in my body. I was so much in my head. And that was a very powerful experience. So to be clear, exposing suppressed stuff was key to being able to move past it. Okay, so that's good to know. But yeah, for some people that can be too much. Okay, if we're able to do that, that's great. Sometimes if something is recurring, we need to kind of explore what's going on here. So thanks for sharing that. That's helpful for that clarification. Maybe I misinterpreted what you were saying. So anyway, thanks everybody for participating. If you've got any questions, let me know. If you've got any topics that you'd like me to talk about, let me know. If I've got something useful to say on that topic, I will. Dare to dream big dreams. Keep going. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.